CEO mocked Maid's daughter, "Save my company, and I'll give you $100 million. Then she did the impossible. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into the incredible story. It was an ordinary afternoon at Thorne Industries, the giant tech company led by the self-assured and extremely wealthy CEO, Harrison Thorne. Known for his sharp business mind and unshakable confidence, Harrison had built an empire worth billions. Today, however, something unusual was about to happen. Harrison was sitting in his sleek, modern office overlooking the city. His sharp eyes scanned a report detailing the latest struggles in the company's production division. The numbers were not looking good. Despite his success, the pressure was building, and cracks in the company's operations were starting to show. With his hand on his chin, Harrison leaned back in his leather chair, his thoughts heavy. He knew the stakes were high. If things did not turn around soon, Thorne Industries would be at risk. This was not just about money. His entire reputation was on the line. Harrison's thoughts were interrupted when a quiet knock came at the door. It was his assistant, Sarah. "Sir, there's someone here to see you," she said, looking uneasy. "It's the maid's daughter, I believe." Harrison raised an eyebrow. He knew about Abigail Hayes, the housekeeper who worked in the building. But her daughter, Clementine, was nothing more than a background figure in his eyes, often seen but rarely noticed. "Send her in," Harrison said, not expecting anything significant. As the door opened, in walked a young girl of no more than 10 years old, with messy blonde hair tied back in a ponytail. She wore simple, worn clothes that clearly marked her as someone who didn't belong in a place like this. Harrison looked at her, momentarily irritated at the disruption. "What is this about?" he asked. The girl stepped forward, her eyes filled with determination despite her obvious nervousness. She cleared her throat and said, "I've come to save your company, Mr. Thorne." Harrison's gaze turned from curious to skeptical. This was clearly a joke. The daughter of one of his employees, someone who probably cleaned floors and took out the trash, claiming she could save his company? He chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Really? And how do you plan on doing that?" he asked, a mocking tone creeping into his voice. Clementine, undeterred, looked him straight in the eye and replied, "I can fix the problem with your new energy project. I know what went wrong." Harrison raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her confidence, but still doubtful. "You think you can fix a problem that has stumped my entire team of experts?" he asked, incredulity seeping into his voice. She nodded. "I know exactly what's wrong, but you have to trust me." He laughed, leaning forward with a smug grin. "All right, kid, I'll tell you what. If you can fix this mess, I'll give you $100 million. But if you fail, you'll leave this office and never show your face around here again. Deal?" Clementine swallowed hard, but her gaze remained steady. "Deal," she said, her voice calm but determined. Harrison, still skeptical, handed her the project report. "Here you go. Good luck." What happened next would shock him, his team, and everyone who ever doubted her. Clementine took the report in her small hands and began to study it. Harrison watched in disbelief as she flipped through the pages, her brow furrowing as she concentrated. Moments passed, and then, without warning, she stood up and pointed to a specific set of figures on the report. "This is where you went wrong," she said, her voice filled with certainty. "You miscalculated the power output, and your engineers missed the flaws in the initial design. But I can fix it. Give me 1 hour, and I'll show you." Harrison was stunned. He had seen many so-called geniuses attempt to solve problems, but never a child. "You've got 1 hour," he said, his voice now serious, though still doubtful. As Clementine worked her magic, Harrison's skepticism began to fade. What she was doing was nothing short of remarkable. In just an hour, she had outlined a new solution that not only fixed the problem, but also improved the overall efficiency of the energy system. Harrison's jaw dropped as he saw the results. He had underestimated her, but now he saw her brilliance. She had done the impossible. He had no words. All he could do was nod, acknowledging the genius of the girl before him. Clementine had not only saved his company, but she had proven that true talent can come from the most unexpected places. The room was silent as Clementine stood there, looking up at Harrison. He couldn't believe what had just happened. A child, no older than 10, had come into his office, fixed a problem that had eluded his entire team, and saved his company from a financial disaster. But the shock had not worn off yet. Harrison's mind raced as he processed what had just unfolded. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of vulnerability, something that was completely foreign to him. He had always been the one in control, the one who made the decisions, but today, a little girl had completely flipped the script. "You really did it," Harrison finally managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. Clementine didn't respond immediately. She simply nodded, her small face still flushed with the effort it had taken to solve the problem. Her hands, though steady, trembled slightly. She wasn't sure what she expected from him, but she knew she had done her best. "I just did what needed to be done," she said quietly, her voice calm yet filled with the quiet confidence of someone who knew they had done something extraordinary. Harrison shook his head, still trying to wrap his mind around it. "I don't know how you did it, but you did. You've saved everything." He paused, then looked at her with a mixture of awe and gratitude. "You've earned that $100 million. Clementine looked up at him, her eyes wide. She hadn't expected him to actually follow through on the deal. I didn't think you'd really give me the money," she said, her voice soft. Harrison smiled slightly. "You earned it. But you've also earned something else. Respect." He paused before continuing. "You see, I've spent my entire life focused on building an empire. I've made countless decisions, always calculating risks, always seeking to expand. But I never saw people like you, people who have the real power to change things." Clementine shifted uncomfortably under his gaze, unsure of what to say. Harrison took a deep breath, his eyes softening. "You're different, Clementine. You've reminded me of what really matters." Clementine blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" she asked, genuinely curious. "I mean that I've been too focused on money, on numbers, on status," Harrison said, his voice more reflective now. "But you've shown me that there's something more important than that. Truth, humility, and integrity. You've made me realize that I've lost touch with what it means to care about the people who make this company what it is." For the first time in a long while, Harrison felt truly vulnerable. He had been so used to the high-powered meetings, the constant pressure, the need to always be the one in charge. But this young girl, with nothing but her intelligence and determination, had shaken him to his core. "I've been wrong about a lot of things," Harrison admitted. "I've overlooked people. I've pushed them aside. And today, you've made me realize that I need to change. That the real power in business is not in being the loudest voice in the room, but in listening, in understanding, and in respecting everyone, no matter their status." Clementine was silent for a moment. She hadn't expected him to say any of this. She had expected a quick thank you and the $100 million, but not this level of introspection. "I don't think you're a bad person, Mr. Thorne," she said softly. "You just needed to hear the truth." Harrison chuckled, a small laugh that was surprisingly genuine. "It looks like I've still got a lot to learn." He stood up, extending his hand toward her. "You've done more than just save my company, Clementine. You've taught me something I never thought I'd learn." Clementine stood up as well, and after a brief hesitation, she took his hand. "Thank you, Mr. Thorne," she said. As they shook hands, the weight of the moment wasn't lost on either of them. It was a moment of understanding, a moment where the walls between power and humility, between wealth and wisdom, had dissolved. For Harrison Thorne, it was a moment of clarity, one that would change the course of his life and his company forever. As the days passed, Clementine returned to the quiet life she had always known, but things had changed. Harrison Thorne's words, his genuine respect, and his promise to change the way he saw the world lingered in her mind. But despite the $100 million he had offered, and the offer of a brighter future, Clementine's thoughts remained with her mother, Abigail. She knew that their struggles were far from over, no matter how much money they now had. Abigail continued to work tirelessly at Thorne Industries, cleaning floors and taking care of things behind the scenes, all while facing the constant challenge of providing for her daughter. Clementine's mind buzzed with thoughts of how to help her mother and the others who worked tirelessly without recognition. She had witnessed the way the employees at Thorne Industries were treated, and it didn't sit well with her. The wealth, the power, the success that Harrison Thorne had built his empire on, it had all come at a cost. The people who made it all possible were often invisible, working long hours for little more than a paycheck. She couldn't ignore it. Despite her young age, Clementine knew what she had to do. She approached Harrison one more time, this time with a plan. The billionaire had been kind enough to invite her back to his office. After all, "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice filled with determination, "I've been thinking about what you said. You told me that the real power in business is about listening, understanding, and respecting everyone. Well, I have a proposal for you." Harrison looked at her, intrigued. He had grown to admire her resilience, her intelligence, and her ability to see things others could not. "What kind of proposal?" he asked, his voice soft but expectant. Clementine took a deep breath before speaking. "You've got the power to change things, Mr. Thorne. You've built an empire, but you've overlooked something: the people who make it run. I want to create something for them, for all the people who are invisible in this company. A program that will recognize their contributions, give them the resources they need to grow, and show them that they matter." Harrison sat back in his chair, considering her words. It was a bold idea, one that would require more than just money. It would require a complete shift in the way he viewed his company and his employees. But as he thought about it, he realized that Clementine was right. The very thing that had made his empire successful, the dedication and hard work of his employees, was also the thing that had been forgotten. "You're right," Harrison finally said, his voice steady. "We've neglected the very people who made this company what it is." He paused, his gaze fixed on Clementine. "But what do you propose? How do we fix this?" Clementine smiled, her confidence growing. "I want to create a foundation, a program that helps employees, from the cleaners to the engineers, get the training they need to move up in the company. I want them to have a voice, to feel heard, and to know that their work matters. And I want to make sure they're compensated fairly for the work they do, not just as an afterthought, but as a core part of the company's success." Harrison nodded slowly. "That's a big task, but it's one I'm willing to take on." He stood up from his desk, a new sense of purpose in his eyes. "We'll make it happen. Not just for them, but for the future of this company. You've opened my eyes, Clementine. I won't forget this." Clementine's heart swelled with pride as she stood up, ready to take the next step. The journey wasn't over, but it had just begun. Together, they would change Thorne Industries from the inside out, creating a place where everyone, no matter their job or background, could thrive. The work would be hard, but it would be worth it. And for the first time, Clementine believed she could make a real difference. The days following Harrison's agreement were filled with a whirlwind of meetings, planning, and execution. Clementine's vision for Thorne Industries had ignited a fire within the company that no one had expected. The idea of a new program to empower and uplift every employee, regardless of their position, started to take shape. Harrison, with his usual intensity, began to transform the company from the inside out, focusing not just on profits, but on the people who made the business run. He didn't realize how deeply the changes would affect him. As the new employee development program gained momentum, the staff began to see a shift. People who had been overlooked, ignored, and taken for granted suddenly found themselves being treated with the respect they deserved. Abigail, Clementine's mother, was one of the first to notice the change. She had worked at Thorne Industries for over a decade, doing the hard, thankless work of keeping the offices clean. But now, she was called into a meeting with Harrison and a few of the company's top executives. "Abigail, we've been discussing a new initiative," Harrison said, his voice filled with sincerity. "We want to offer you a position that reflects your years of dedication and hard work here. We're creating a new program, and we need people like you. People who understand the value of hard work and who can help others see it too." Abigail couldn't believe what she was hearing. A promotion? She had never imagined such a thing. The idea that someone like her, someone who had spent years quietly doing her job in the background, could be recognized in such a way was overwhelming. She was speechless. "This program is about giving everyone a chance to grow," Harrison continued. "You've earned this, Abigail, and we want you to help lead it." Tears welled up in Abigail's eyes as she struggled to find the words. I don't know what to say. This is more than I ever dreamed of." Harrison smiled, his expression softening. "You don't have to say anything. Just know that this is just the beginning. We're going to make sure everyone here, no matter their job, has the opportunity to rise. It's time we make things right." Word quickly spread throughout the company about the new initiative. Employees from all departments began to see opportunities for advancement, mentorship, and recognition. For the first time, people felt like they mattered. It wasn't just about pay raises or bonuses. It was about the dignity of knowing that their work was valued. But it wasn't easy. There were challenges ahead. Not everyone was on board with the changes. Some of the higher-ups in the company, those who had long been accustomed to the old way of doing things, resisted. They didn't understand why their focus had shifted from bottom-line results to people. But Clementine wasn't deterred. She kept pushing, working alongside Harrison and the new leadership team to ensure the program succeeded. "We're not just changing the company," she said to him one evening, as they reviewed the feedback from the first group of employees enrolled in the program. "We're changing lives. And that's worth every challenge." Harrison nodded, his respect for the young girl growing deeper every day. She had shown him that true leadership wasn't about making the hardest decisions or winning the most deals. It was about understanding people, listening to them, and helping them grow. "You were right," he said, looking at her with admiration. "This is just the beginning." As the weeks passed, Thorne Industries began to transform. Employees who had once felt invisible now had a voice. They were learning new skills, taking on new responsibilities, and becoming a part of something bigger than themselves. The culture of the company shifted, and with it, the morale and productivity. Harrison had started this journey believing that he could simply fix a failing company, but now, he realized he had begun something far more meaningful. He wasn't just rebuilding Thorne Industries. He was creating a legacy. And it all started with Clementine, the little girl who had taught him that the true power in business didn't lie in profits alone, but in the people who made it all happen. Months passed, and the transformation within Thorne Industries was nothing short of remarkable. The employee development program, which had started as a small idea championed by a young girl, Clementine, was now a cornerstone of the company's new culture. The change wasn't just in the operations, it was in the very spirit of the business. Harrison Thorne, the once hard-nosed CEO, had become a different man. He had learned that power didn't come from wealth alone, but from people who felt valued, heard, and respected. The ripple effect of this shift was felt across every level of the company. Abigail, Clementine's mother, had risen through the ranks, and her new role wasn't just a job. It was a mission to inspire the others who, like her, had spent years working behind the scenes. She worked with Clementine to implement the program, ensuring that every employee, no matter their role, felt the benefits. But not everyone was on board with the changes. Some of the old guard, those who had climbed the corporate ladder using traditional methods, resisted the new direction. They didn't understand the emphasis on empathy and respect. They wanted results, and they wanted them now. There were tense meetings, heated discussions, and moments where it seemed like the company's vision might unravel. Harrison, however, stood firm. He had come to understand something fundamental. The company's success wasn't solely based on bottom-line figures, but on the strength of the people who made up that company. He wasn't going to let the resistance stop the transformation. "We are in this for the long haul," he told Clementine one afternoon as they sat in his office reviewing the program's progress. "What we're doing here is changing lives. It's not going to be easy, but it will be worth it." Clementine smiled, her confidence unwavering. "I believe in this, Mr. Thorne. I believe in the people here. And I believe in you." The coming months were a test. There were more challenges ahead. Some employees left, unable to adjust to the new culture, but others embraced it wholeheartedly. Slowly but surely, the company began to see real, tangible improvements. Productivity rose, turnover dropped, and the atmosphere at Thorne Industries transformed into one where collaboration and respect were at the heart of every project. One day, Harrison called a company-wide meeting. The room was packed with employees, all eagerly waiting to hear what their CEO had to say. As he stepped up to the podium, the energy in the room was electric. "Today marks a new chapter for Thorne Industries," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "We've made incredible strides, and it's all because of the work each and every one of you has put in. But more than that, it's because of the trust we've built in one another. This company is no longer just about numbers. It's about people. It's about recognizing the value in every person who walks through those doors, no matter their role or title." The room erupted in applause. Harrison looked around, his heart swelling with pride. And then he turned to Clementine, who was standing in the front row with a smile on her face. None of this would have been possible without Clementine, he continued, gesturing toward her. She showed me the real meaning of leadership. It's about empowering others. It's about lifting them up, not using them to climb higher. Clementine blushed, her eyes shining with pride. She had never imagined that something she had started, something so small, would turn into a movement that could change an entire company. But that's exactly what had happened. The employees, the ones who had been invisible for so long, now had a voice. They were seen, heard, and valued. And they were thriving. As the meeting came to a close, Clementine felt a sense of accomplishment she had never known. The work wasn't done, and there would be more hurdles to overcome. But she knew one thing for sure. Thorn Industries had been forever changed. And she had played a part in that change. As the company continued to grow, so did the challenges. Thorn Industries had undergone a complete transformation, but there was still so much to be done. Clementine and Harrison knew that creating a new culture within the company wasn't just about recognition and development. It was about ensuring that those changes could withstand the pressures of an increasingly competitive market. One day, Harrison called a meeting with his executive team to discuss the next phase of their journey. "We've done a lot of work to get here," Harrison said, looking at the faces of his trusted team members. "But the work is far from over. We need to prove that this shift in our company's culture isn't just a trend. It's a new way of doing business. Our competitors are watching us, and we need to be ahead of the curve." Clementine, who had grown comfortable in her role as an advisor and partner to Harrison, spoke up. "We've already made the shift internally," she said, her voice confident. "Now, it's time to take this outward. We need to show the world that Thorn Industries is not only about innovation and profit. We're about integrity, growth, and empowerment." Harrison nodded, his gaze fixed on her. He had come to respect her not just for her intelligence, but for her unwavering belief in what they were doing. "I agree," he said. "We need to position ourselves as leaders in this new era of business, where people come before profits." "But how do we do that?" Clementine smiled. "We need to integrate our values into every aspect of the business. From the way we engage with clients to how we create partnerships, we need to ensure that our culture of empowerment and respect is reflected in everything we do." The meeting continued, and soon, they laid out a plan to take Thorn Industries to the next level. They would launch a new marketing campaign highlighting the company's core values, collaborate with socially conscious organizations, and create opportunities for employees to volunteer in their communities. It was a bold plan, one that would further solidify Thorn Industries' reputation as a company that cared about more than just its bottom line. But the plan wasn't without its risks. Harrison had always been a businessman who focused on numbers, and the idea of prioritizing social responsibility over immediate profit was something he had never fully embraced. But Clementine had opened his eyes to something more meaningful. It was a lesson in leadership that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. The campaign launched successfully, with positive feedback pouring in from both the public and employees. Thorn Industries was becoming a company known not only for its innovations in technology, but for its commitment to making the world a better place. Employees felt more connected to their work than ever before. They were no longer just cogs in a machine. They were part of something bigger. Abigail, Clementine's mother, was one of the first to see the impact. "I never thought I'd see the day when a company like this would care about us," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But here we are, making a real difference." Harrison, now a changed man, could only smile. He had always been focused on success, but now, he understood that true success wasn't just about profits. It was about the people who helped create that success. As the months passed, the new values became embedded in the fabric of Thorn Industries. It wasn't always easy, and there were still moments of resistance, but the company was thriving. Employees were not only more productive, but more engaged, feeling proud of the work they were doing. Harrison knew they had set the foundation for something lasting. And it all started with one young girl who had the courage to stand up and speak the truth. Clementine had not only saved the company, but had taught everyone, including Harrison, that leadership was about more than just making the right business decisions. It was about making the right human decisions. And in doing so, they had created a company that would not only survive in the business world, but would change it. As Thorne Industries continued to thrive under its new vision, Clementine began to realize that change wasn't just about the company. It was about the world around her. The culture shift at the company had begun to ripple outward, inspiring other organizations to take a closer look at how they treated their employees. Clementine's idea, her belief in the power of people, was spreading far beyond Thorne Industries. But with this new sense of responsibility came the challenge of maintaining the momentum. One afternoon, as Clementine sat with Harrison in his office, discussing the latest feedback from their new employee initiatives, he looked at her with a thoughtful expression. "You've done something incredible here," Harrison said, his voice full of respect. "But we can't stop now. There's a lot more work to be done. People are watching us, and I think we've only scratched the surface of what's possible." Clementine, now used to the weight of responsibility, nodded. She had always known that changing one company was just the beginning. "I know," she said, her voice steady. "But we need to make sure this isn't just about the people in this company. We need to make this about everyone, every employee in every industry, no matter where they are." Harrison leaned forward, intrigued by her words. "What do you have in mind?" he asked. Clementine's eyes lit up with determination. "We need to start a movement," she said. "A global movement that shows people how important they are, how much their work truly matters. It's time we go beyond Thorne Industries. We need to create something that will change the world, not just one company at a time, but on a massive scale." Harrison was silent for a moment, processing what she was saying. "A global movement," he repeated. Clementine smiled. "Yes, we need to show the world that when we value people, when we invest in them and give them the opportunity to grow, we can create something much more powerful than just profit. We can create a society where work is about more than just making money. It's about making lives better." Harrison sat back in his chair, clearly moved by her vision. He had never expected a conversation about business to take this turn, but he was beginning to understand that this was more than just about running a company. This was about changing the way the world viewed work itself. "So what's the first step?" he asked. Clementine thought for a moment, then said, "We start with the people. We create a platform, a place where companies from all over the world can share best practices, offer resources, and create opportunities for their employees. We build a community where businesses are focused on the well-being of their workers, where everyone has a chance to rise." Harrison smiled. He could see it now, the potential of what they could create together. "You're right," he said, "and I think we can make this happen. We have the resources, the influence, and the determination to make it a reality." Over the next few months, Harrison and Clementine worked tirelessly to bring this new vision to life. They launched a global initiative called People First, a platform that connected businesses across industries and countries, promoting employee well-being and creating spaces for innovation and growth. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of companies joined the movement, pledging to prioritize their workers, to treat them with dignity and respect, and to offer opportunities for growth and advancement. The ripple effect was felt all around the world. Employees who had once felt invisible in their jobs began to feel valued. They knew that they weren't just working to make someone else rich. They were contributing to something bigger, something that could change the way the world worked. The success of People First became a testament to Clementine's belief that people were the true driving force behind success. Harrison, now fully embracing this new way of thinking, saw his company and his life change in ways he never expected. He realized that true leadership wasn't about controlling the narrative or managing the bottom line. It was about empowering others, giving them the tools they needed to succeed, and helping them reach their full potential. As the movement continued to grow, Clementine found herself reflecting on the journey that had led her here. She had never imagined that her simple act of standing up to Harrison Thorne would lead to this. But she knew one thing for sure. The world was changing, and she was going to be a part of that change. And as for Harrison, he was no longer just a businessman. He was a leader in a movement that would leave a lasting legacy for generations to come. As People First grew, it began to surpass even Harrison and Clementine's expectations. The initiative wasn't just changing businesses, it was changing lives. Employees who had felt trapped in jobs with no room for growth were now flourishing in a supportive, empowering environment. Their voices were being heard, their contributions valued. And while this transformation was a victory for the workers, it also proved something monumental to the business world, that profit and purpose could go hand in hand. But even as the movement spread, there was still work to be done. Clementine knew they had only just begun to scratch the surface. They had created a model for employee well-being, but now it was time to integrate that vision into every corner of society. One day, Harrison came to Clementine with a new idea. "I've been thinking," he said, his eyes filled with a new fire. "What if we expand this beyond the workplace? What if we take this idea of valuing people and use it to address the inequalities outside of work? I mean, think about it. If we can create a culture that prioritizes people at work, why can't we do it everywhere?" Clementine looked at him, her heart swelling with pride. She had always believed that their vision could extend far beyond Thorne Industries. But hearing Harrison say it was a pivotal moment. "I think you're onto something," she said. "But how do we make that happen?" Harrison smiled. "We create a program that takes this model into schools, into communities, into families. A program that teaches people, from an early age, that their worth isn't based on their job or their income, but on who they are as individuals. We need to teach people how to value themselves and others in ways that go beyond the material world." Clementine's mind raced as she processed the idea. It was ambitious, even more so than people first. But she saw the potential. She had always believed that true change started with the individual, and if they could empower people to recognize their value in every aspect of their lives, it would create a ripple effect that could change the world. "Let's do it," Clementine said, her voice full of conviction. "Let's take this to the next level." The plan was simple but bold. They would partner with schools, nonprofit organizations, and community groups to bring the message of empowerment and self-worth to people of all ages. They would host workshops, launch educational programs, and create a network of support for individuals who wanted to learn how to value themselves and others. The response was overwhelming. Schools from all over the country began reaching out, eager to adopt the program. Nonprofits saw the potential to bring the message of empowerment to underserved communities, and parents saw an opportunity to teach their children a new way of thinking. As the program spread, Harrison and Clementine found themselves in a whirlwind of speaking engagements, media interviews, and community events. They were no longer just the faces of Thorne Industries. They were ambassadors of a global movement. But as the movement gained momentum, there were challenges. Not everyone embraced their message. Some critics argued that the program was too idealistic, that businesses and communities couldn't afford to prioritize people over profits. They were met with resistance from traditionalists who believed that success could only be measured in financial terms. But Clementine wasn't deterred. She had seen firsthand how much potential lay in every individual when given the right support and opportunities. "We're changing the way people think," she said to Harrison one evening, as they reviewed the latest reports from the program. "And that's not going to happen overnight. But we're making progress, one person at a time." Harrison nodded, his belief in their mission stronger than ever. "We've come this far," he said, "and we're not stopping now." The program continued to grow, touching lives in ways that Harrison and Clementine had never imagined. It wasn't just a business revolution anymore. It was a cultural shift. People began to see their value not in what they could produce, but in who they were. The world was starting to change, and it all started with the courage of a young girl, her belief in others, and the man who learned to listen. The legacy of People First was now a part of the fabric of society. And as Clementine stood on a stage one evening, speaking to a crowd of thousands about the impact they had made, she realized that this was only the beginning. The world had been forever changed, and they had been the ones to spark that change. As time went on, the effects of the People First movement became undeniable. What had started as a small initiative to improve the work culture at Thorne Industries had grown into a global shift, inspiring millions of people and organizations worldwide. The ripple effect of this transformation reached far beyond what anyone, even Clementine, had ever imagined. Businesses that once saw employees as mere cogs in a machine were now embracing the idea that valuing their workers, providing opportunities for growth, and fostering an environment of respect and collaboration were the true keys to long-term success. The world was evolving, and people were starting to realize that success could not be measured only by profit, but by the impact they had on the lives of others. But as the movement spread, so did the challenges. There were still skeptics, still people who believed the old way of doing business was the only way. Some said the people-first approach was idealistic and unworkable, that it would collapse under the weight of economic pressures. They argued that businesses needed to prioritize profits above all else, and that anything else was a distraction. Harrison had heard these criticisms and knew there would always be those who resisted change. But he also knew something that had become undeniable to him over the past year. People were the foundation of everything. He had seen the results firsthand. Employees were more engaged, more loyal, and more productive when they felt valued. And the company's financial performance had improved, not in spite of their new culture, but because of it. We've proven that people are the true asset, Harrison said during a company-wide meeting, looking out at the employees who had embraced the change. And we've shown the world that we can thrive by putting people first. But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. Our mission is far from over. Clementine, now standing beside him, couldn't help but smile. The journey had been challenging, full of hurdles and unexpected obstacles, but it had also been the most rewarding experience of her life. She had not only helped transform a company, but she had also played a part in changing the way the world viewed work. It's been an incredible journey, Clementine said, her voice filled with gratitude. And we've done it together. But there's so much more to do. The work we've started here can change the future of businesses everywhere. We've proven that success doesn't have to come at the expense of people's dignity or well-being. And we need to keep pushing forward, to keep inspiring others to do the same. Harrison nodded in agreement, his eyes filled with the same fire that had sparked the movement in the first place. Let's keep building on this. We've only just begun to make the impact we're capable of. The crowd erupted in applause, their enthusiasm palpable. And in that moment, Clementine realized that this wasn't just about her, or even about Harrison. It was about all the people who had embraced this new vision, the employees, the communities, and the businesses that had joined the movement. Together, they had created something bigger than themselves, something that would leave a legacy for generations to come. The people-first movement had become a force that could not be ignored. And as Clementine looked out at the faces of the people who had made it all possible, she knew that the world was never going to be the same again. This was just the beginning, and they were ready to change the world, one person at a time.